The year is 2006 and Spain is on a high. The economy has been experiencing significant growth since the turn of the millennium. In just 6 years, per capita output had more than doubled. German economists were predicting that Spain would overtake them in per capita income in as little as 5 years, and that Spain would become a central power in Europe. Certain regions of the country were achieving full employment, and the government passed laws that made working conditions comfortable and rewarding. This boom was fueled by a widespread belief in the country's continued growth, and everyone wanted to be part of it. The Eurozone opened up international investment with a shared currency, and the best way to get in on Spain's success was to own a piece of the country. Buying a beach house in Marbella or a studio apartment in Madrid wasn't just a luxury, it was seen as a smart investment, one that also allowed you to enjoy time in the sun. Real estate agents were conducting so much business that they became local celebrities. Tradespeople, such as plumbers, were in such high demand to build enough houses that it wasn't unusual to see a plumber driving a Bentley. This all became a self-fulfilling prophecy. As more money poured into the country, people took on debt to get exposure to the Spanish real estate market. This led to more need for construction, which in turn made Spain's GDP look great, which made it appear as a good investment. But of course it wasn't. The global financial crisis, GFC, and the Eurozone crisis put an end to the debt-fueled party. Almost 2 decades later, Spain's economy is still poorer than it was in 2007. Unemployment remains high, especially among young people. Broader economic activity has stagnated. The country still struggles with debt, and perhaps worst of all, the slowdown didn't even make the housing market cheaper for the average person. Spain has become one of the scariest economies in the world. With hindsight, it's easy to see the speculative exuberance of the early 2000s as destined for failure. Yet, Spain had a less leveraged economy back then than many major nations today. So, if Spain is a cautionary tale, it's worth asking if the world has learned anything. What drove Spain's rapid economic growth? What caused it to crash? Why has Spain struggled to recover for so long? And are there other major economies today in even more precarious position than Spain was in 2007? Spain's economic roller coaster serves as a reminder of the importance of managing investments wisely. The country has experienced several economic roller coasters throughout its history, from the overuse of gold during colonization to being left out of the US Marshall Plan revival to its early liberalization policies. To understand Spain's present-day economic crisis, though, we need to start with its success story in the 1990s. At the time, Spain had an unemployment rate that wouldn't budge. The Spanish government began making moves to secure a profitable seat at the increasingly globalized economic table. They believed the best way to do this was by joining the European Economic Community, EEC, which they did in 1986. Initially, the results were underwhelming, with Spain's GDP per capita remaining at around 72% of the EEC average. However, after enduring a global recession in the early 1990s, Spain managed to curb inflation and reduce unemployment by the mid-90s. At the same time, the EEC was integrated into the European Union in 1993, and Spain became one of the first nations to adopt the euro in 1999. Adopting a shared currency like the euro comes with pros and cons. One advantage is the ease of trade, as price comparisons with neighboring countries become simpler, making it easier for businesses and consumers to find the best deals. Another benefit is that shared currencies tend to be stronger, which makes paying for imports easier and credit cheaper. However, losing monetary sovereignty limits a country's ability to control interest rates, handle inflation, or devalue its currency to boost exports. Spain's economic bubble really began to inflate in 1998, just a year before adopting the euro. A surge in immigration, which began that year, sparked increased interest in the housing market. Spain focused on building homes for the new immigrants, and construction, being labor-intensive, was seen as a way to combat the country's stubbornly high unemployment. At the peak of the boom, blue-collar workers were earning enough to drive luxury cars, and the euro's introduction made transactions and real estate development even easier. Cheap credit fueled the property boom, with Spanish banks offering low-interest loans. Spain's government also incentivized real estate investment by offering tax breaks that made the market incredibly attractive. The tax policies, such as non-taxation on imputed rents, untaxed capital gains, and mortgage interest payment deductions, along with the ability to deduct principal payments from personal income tax, set Spain apart from other countries. Borrowing in Spain's real estate market reached astonishing heights, yet neither the Spanish central government nor global investors saw the warning signs. By 2006, Spain had constructed more than 800,000 homes to house only about 200,000 families. Construction firms and investors were doing all the borrowing, but no one seemed to notice just how much they were borrowing. Spain's budget even reported a surplus during the boom. There was also the matter of regional autonomy. Spain's 17 autonomous regions and their savings banks, known as cajas, played a significant role in the housing market. These savings banks were heavily invested in real estate, which allowed the country's borrowing and construction activity to spiral out of control without central government intervention. At its peak, 12.5% of the Spanish workforce was employed in construction, and the country created more jobs in the European Union than Germany, France, and the UK combined. House prices rose by 71% between 2003 and 2008. Though Spain's central government had set aside 35 billion euros to prepare for non-performing loans, this wasn't nearly enough. When the housing market collapsed, Spain was left in shambles. Real estate debt equaled almost 50% of the country's GDP. Thousands of families couldn't pay their debts, and with homes in negative equity, banks had no way to recoup their losses. This is where the real danger of Spain's housing bubble became apparent. Regional banks were issuing risky mortgages by inflating home prices through appraisal companies. As a result, people were buying homes they couldn't afford, and banks were lending irresponsibly. When the bubble burst, Spain's housing market collapsed, leaving the country in economic turmoil. Spain's economy was hit hard by the crisis, and although it saw some years of growth, its GDP still hasn't recovered to 2007 levels. While most Western nations struggled in the wake of the 2008 housing crisis, Spain was hit particularly hard and has since seen slower economic recovery. Annual salaries, once competitive with those of France, Germany, and the UK, are now lower than they were before the crisis. Spain is still dealing with the effects of the crisis. Its banking sector has been overhauled, but the country still struggles with high unemployment, especially among young people. Many Spaniards have left the country in search of better opportunities, and those who remain face higher housing costs and lower income levels. The country's ties to the euro also limit its ability to manage its own monetary policy, and brain drain is a growing problem. In conclusion, Spain serves as a stark warning to other nations. An economy cannot solve its fiscal problems by relying too heavily on one sector, especially when that sector involves taking on massive amounts of debt. The excitement of economic growth can often eclipse rational judgment, and Spain's housing crash proves that fast money can disappear just as quickly as it arrives. Spain's neighbor Portugal faced similar challenges but is attempting a unique economic recovery plan